Joining us today from the city of Livonia is Maureen Brosnan. I'm glad to have you here. And then joining the city of Romulus, the mayor, Robert McCreight. Thank you, folks, for being here. And with that, I will turn it over to my friend Dave.
Again, thanks for being here to talk about energy reliability, topics that are obviously very important to Michigan. So again, thank you, mayors. I thought I'd start with just getting a baseline, like how important is energy reliability to you, your cities, and your citizens? Maybe we start with Maureen.
So in the city of Livonia, energy is important to 39,000 households, 4,000 businesses. It's critical that it's steady, it's reliable, because when it's not, there is a whole nother set of forces that has to kick into gear to solve problems. Our firefighters, our housing commission, volunteers, police department, our emergency preparedness director, all of those folks need to step up their game in order to fill in the gaps. And we're not able to fill in the gaps when you're without power for 4 to 5 days, which was the case a lot of times in Livonia back in 2021, 22, and 23. We experienced a number of seasons with incredible storms that caused the problem. That wasn't the only problem, though. We were experiencing deterioration in our system, in our structure, the infrastructure. A lot more trees were invading the lines, and as a result, power was really unreliable beginning in 2021.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. It's especially prevalent when you have the areas that were built up in Romulus, the residential areas. Most of them were in the 60s and the 70s. So now we have these trees that we love to see in these rural areas in Romulus, and having that reliability of your utilities and your power specifically in those areas to our customers. But you also look at the economic development side of it. So as we see Romulus grow in a commercial industrial area, 80% of our tax base is commercial industrial, and as we attract that talent and that development to Michigan, one of the first things they ask anymore is about the reliability of the grid, the system, and the utilities, and the power that's available to them.
You both, Maureen, you mentioned trees, and I wanted to ask, because that's been a big issue for the utilities have really wanted to do tree trimming, and sometimes they run into resistance from your residents. How do you navigate working with the utility, but also the residents to kind of smooth over any potential tensions on trimming trees?
Dave, it's like anything else. If you know that it's coming, if you know there's a problem, if you know this is the solution, if you can clearly outline where that solution is going to make a difference in people's lives and be able to explain it to them up front before it happens, that makes the biggest difference of all. So in the city of Livonia, we found that engaging early on with Edison and understanding where they were going to be going in to trim trees, being able to show people that that was an unreliable area on the grid, hence trees needed to be trimmed, really helped to get folks off of that, high level of anxiety that exists around protecting the trees. So, we saw a $70 million investment throughout the system in tree trimming, and Livonia benefited from a lot of that. And that was the first wave of improvement that people began to see. It wasn't the only solution, and I think that's where that second wave of anxiety settled in at. People saw the trees coming down, but they didn't see reliability going up at the same rate as trees were coming down.
Okay. Robert, is that an issue in Romulus, trees? Any resistance from residents to kind of the trimming efforts, or not necessarily?
No, there's a little bit of pushback, but people understood we needed to do that and to increase the service. And with Romulus' population being right around 25,000, we know when grids are out, they're going to go to the area of the highest population density, ahead of time. So we waited a little bit longer for power restoration. So we didn't want to see them trim trees in our area. We love our trees. However, we understood in order to increase that serviceability and maintain the utilities, it was important to get that taken care of.
Okay. To both of you, I mean, what sort of improvements have you seen in the last, 5 years? Just Largely probably outages, but there's other things, I guess, as well.
So in the city of Livonia, we have really seen, number one, our partnership with DTE has improved immensely. They have always been partners in our community, but they got a little bit shaken when we saw reliability going down. So we brought DTE back to the table and we talked about things like, how do you make sure that consumers understand when the power is out in their neighborhood and when it's going to be back up, and can you give them reliable data around that? So DTE made some really big efforts in that forward-facing communication and improving the way they were reporting on those numbers. That helped a lot. The second thing we did was we brought them in to understand that we knew DTE understands how to deliver power better than anybody else, but we know our city better than anybody else. So as a result, we're 22% of all of Wayne County's long-term care facilities are in Livonia. When they get hit with a power outage, lives are at stake. So understanding where those facilities resided helped us to work alongside DTE to know that when outages occurred in those areas, they were on the spot knowing that lives were at risk. That was a big change, connecting our emergency preparedness team with theirs. And then, of course, investing in the grid itself. That's something we as a community can't do, but DTE did. And as a result of things like that coming to the table with the city of Livonia, we've seen an increase in our power just tremendously. We now exist at the industry standard. 99.7% of power is delivered every day on time to every customer, and our residents are noticing it. I went out and purchased a generator in 2025, probably a year late. Every dime I spent on that generator has been wasted, and I am glad for it.
The change we've seen is the responsiveness from DTE. You can't fix a problem unless you know the details surrounding that problem. And the responsiveness and the communication we've had with DTE in more recent years to help them isolate where the issues were, and when we saw a break in communication, and they've been responsive to those issues we've had, they've listened. It's been more of a partnership and a cooperative effort to maintain that service and make sure our residents have reliable power. So it's really been about that, in my opinion, that open communication and that responsiveness we've seen from DTE.
Was that something where DTE was proactive, or were you kind of demanding, like you're hearing from your residents, hey, these power outages are lengthy?
I think it was equal. We did get the calls and complaints from our residents, but they could have just said, call this number or pass the buck, right? But they didn't. They answered the phone call, they answered the emails, they sat down, they brought their team to Romulus to hear what our specific needs were, and that's how you find a solution to a problem. So.
In Livonia, it was a little bit of a push-pull. We really believe in holding people accountable, and if DTE says that they're going to get power up and restored within 48 hours, 90% of the time, we started measuring it, and we started posting it on our website. And when they didn't measure up, we all knew, and we all came to the table, and we all tried to figure out how do we improve that number together. And I think it was that bit of a push-pull that worked in our community. Our job as leaders is to make sure that utility providers are held accountable. And I think we did a really good job of helping people not only to measure up to a standard that they set, but to exceed it. And I think that's what we found in the city.
Okay. I was curious both your thoughts on one issue for utilities has been to improve reliability. They need to spend money. They have to make upgrades, and that costs money, which is typically passed on to consumers. How do you think about that tension, and particularly when you're thinking about your residents?
So it's an interesting tension because we've seen close to $42 million invested in Livonia's system over the past 5 years by DTE, and there's an additional $12 million that's coming this year, investment in the system. And without that investment, I am convinced that we would not see the improvement that we've seen. So you go back and you look at what the Michigan Public Service Commission has reviewed in terms of rates, and we haven't seen consumer rates going up that much. So somehow DTE has figured out the magic way of making sure that they're using funds in the best and most appropriate way to make the improvements that are necessary for their customers. It's happening in our city, and we're grateful for it.
I agree. It's not a new formula. We see it in different forms of infrastructure for our gas lines, our water, our sewer, all of those things. You have to reinvest. So you're able to do that and maintain it if you have good community partners and you're finding out what the issues are and your intent in your actions. Then you find out what's the best investment and the best course of action to maintain those utilities without raising those rates to our residents, because nobody really wants to raise those rates. We all know everybody's struggling a little bit right now. We just want to make sure we're intentional in our actions and we find out what those issues are going to be.
Okay. Maureen, I think you said $42 million in investment. I wonder if you could summarize, like, what's that going to?
It goes to improvements in the grid. There's a substation that's being rebuilt. There are new power lines that are being put in, new poles that are being put in. That's the tree trimming program. All of those elements combined, improving that data system that's reporting on data, collecting data, all of that is seeing improvement from DTE.
Robert,
with the installation of the new equipment, you're also seeing better equipment on the site that will help them isolate where there's a problem, where there's a wire down, so they can shut off a grid faster. And coming from the DPW side of things, that's an incredible value to be able to de-energize that grid to effect a timely repair. You know, we did the same thing at DPW. If we had a water main break, you have to isolate, you have to know where your utilities are at, and you can shut that water off. Well, the same thing with DT and the power lines. If they have power lines that are down in the middle of a wooded area, the equipment that they've installed now will allow them to isolate that area faster and effect a faster repair.
One reason for the big storms is often attributed to climate change and the need to have more resiliency. I was just curious, your community's approaches, not just with energy, but other issues, like how are you prepping for these kind of storms that are clearly more powerful than 40 years ago?
Backup, backup, backup. Whether it's installing backup generators in your new facilities whenever you can. And by the way, DTE has been a great partner in that, helping us to understand what our capacity needs to be. We recently redid our recreation center and built a brand new senior center and attached it. That's our emergency support service during a storm. It's meant to remain standing at full power throughout any storm that we have. And we knew best how to get a generator for that system because we worked with DTE at the front end of that. Again, as a partner, DTE has made 300 generators available to our individual consumers in the event of a major outage. They were able to pull that kind of resource together. We didn't have to deploy it, but it was good to know that we had it. So it's that kind of backup system that is really what's going to help us to stand up to these storms. They're still coming. That's not going to change, but a stronger system that's the ultimate strength.
Okay. I think you're right. It's about building redundancies into these systems. How do we have that backup? The increased storm events that we're having now with the water coming in, you have to make sure you have redundancies in place to take care of the city buildings. City Hall doesn't shut down. We have to operate. And also your utilities. We got to make sure we're moving that water as well.
Probably the last question for both of you. And Robert, I think you mentioned earlier economic development. To what extent is that a consideration when you talk to businesses that are looking to come into Romulus or Livonia, just the need to have reliable power?
I've been in economic development and construction in Romulus for over 20 years, and it used to be the top priority of any developer who wanted to develop in Michigan or southeastern Michigan was really about how fast can I get a shovel in the ground? How fast can we go through a process? Now, the two top priorities have turned to talent and workforce, and the second question is about reliable utilities. Where are we going to get our power from? What is the reliability of that grid? And that's how they're making a decision based on, do you want to develop in Texas or Michigan or Tennessee or wherever they're going to go? That's really raised in their priority level right now.
I think this is true statewide. It's reliability and affordability. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing businesses come into Livonia, really a hotbed of business right now coming in around food service and grocery stores. All of them need reliable power. That 22% of all long-term care facilities in Livonia, that's a life and death power. So we need to make sure that it's steady and it is reliable. DTE has done that. It's one of the first questions people ask when they come in. What's it going to cost and how steady is the service? And now we've got a good story to report.
Well, thanks to both of you mayors for coming in and talking. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
One last point I'd like to make, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. Yeah. We've had an issue, and that's when I talk about DTE coming to the table to find out how to solve problems. When they abandon a utility or they change pole, they have the abandoned utilities that remain with communication on those poles. And that's been a real hot topic. And so where we see DTE's continued reinvestment in the grid and Romulus and the improvement, a lot of times the frontline user just sees the old pole and the old utility there. It's got nothing to do with DTE. So we've had to find some really creative solutions on how we help vacate those poles, remove them, and remove that blight. And I want to credit DTE for trying to find creative ways to take care of that. We're still haven't found that solved yet, but I'm looking forward to those repairs and effects coming to Romulus.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.